MarkRogersTV back with you, continuing our series looking at every Power 5 conference schedule for 2014. We've almost made our way through the SEC Eastern Division. We still have UK. We've got South Carolina. The Gamecocks coming off 3 consecutive 11-2 campaigns. Can they match it despite losing all that talent on defense? Clowney, Sutton, Quarles, Hampton, all gone. Connor Shaw at quarterback, of course, and a lot of losses across the board, and again, especially on defense. Dylan Thompson at the controls. Will South Carolina match that 11-2 campaign or possibly supersede it and get their way into the 4-team college football playoff? Well, before we talk 2014, gotta give a round of applause for that 2013 schedule. I would applaud a little bit louder, but my son's asleep. That might have been the toughest non-conference slate in college football for South Carolina. They had the opener against North Carolina at home. And no, the Tar Heels were not elite. They won 7 or 8 football games, but they were strong down the stretch. And they always bring top NFL talent to the field. So South Carolina wins that by 17. They close out with a toughie against Clemson, and the Tigers, much better than they typically are. They finished in the top 10 after winning the Orange Bowl. Then there was that sneaky tough game against Central Florida. The Knights have built a decent program. They won a bowl game the year before that, but with Blake Bortles at quarterback, who's a top 10 NFL pick, Storm Johnson, an NFL running back, they won the Fiesta Bowl. They only lost 1 game, and so that was a sneaky tough one on the schedule for South Carolina, and they survived at 28-25. So between Central Florida, Clemson, and North Carolina, that might have been the toughest non-conference slate in college football in 2013. Okay, on to 2014 for Carolina, and they open up on the SEC Network Thursday night matchup with Texas A&M, and they're probably catching the Aggies with the quarterback change at the right time before Kevin Sumlin gets his quarterback in place and runs the offense week to week against tough competition and gets it rolling down the stretch. Texas A&M probably, again, at a good time for South Carolina at home on Thursday night with the place rocking. Okay, what we typically like to look at when we look at the SEC in particular is, of course, everybody plays everybody within the division. Who do you play outside the division? That makes all the world of difference. Do you catch the easy Arkansas or Kentucky matchup? Or do you have a pretty substantial 2 in Texas A&M at home in the opener, August 28th, and then down on October 25th? South Carolina's got to go on the plains to take on Auburn. So Texas A&M and Auburn, not exactly an easy draw for South Carolina after they got to play Arkansas last season from the SEC Western Division. Okay, the other non-conference games, we've got East Carolina, a pretty difficult game. Slot that somewhat close to the North Carolina matchup from 2013. Also, South Carolina's got a game against Furman. They got South Alabama, so those are obviously 2 easy wins. Then they've got the finale at Clemson. The Tigers look to be not quite as tough as they were with Taj Boyd and Sammy Watkins and company in 2013. So the non-conference slate, I hold my applause this season for 2014 non-conference with East Carolina. Again, Furman, South Alabama, and Clemson, but not bad. We would like everybody that's an elite team or even a mid-tier team in college football to schedule at least one difficult non-conference game. And, of course, South Carolina's always got that, typically, with Clemson. And then the 2 games to watch out for non-division are at Auburn October 25th and that opener, which we'll all be amped for with Texas A&M coming to town in Columbia. Other than that, the key games, of course, against Georgia. That one always is early in September and seems to really distinguish the front runner in the SEC Eastern Division. So you've got Georgia at home for South Carolina. They've got Missouri at home after they pulled off the miracle going to Mizzou last season and defeating the Tigers in overtime. And again, Tennessee trying to avenge the loss at Neyland Stadium last year in Knoxville. They've got Tennessee at home this season in a back-to-back with Tennessee and Florida. Probably the toughest stretch is right there at the end of October, early November, with Auburn on the road, then Tennessee at home, and at Florida. There's really not a killer stretch. Typically in the SEC, you see that killer stretch of 6 or 7 games, but South Carolina's pretty much got it spread out. Texas A&M, East Carolina, Georgia, Vandy, Missouri, but then they've got Kentucky and Furman before they've got to gear up for Auburn. Then they've got Tennessee and Florida, two mid-tier teams, before South Alabama, before they wind up with Clemson. So they've got the toughies, Texas A&M, Georgia, Missouri, Auburn, and Clemson spaced out. South Carolina should finish 10-2 against this schedule. Of course, the game at Auburn, they're going to be, at this point, the way it looks right now, of course, that's game 7. So who knows what's going to happen before that. But at this point, they're probably a 4 or 5 point underdog in that game. And then, of course, Georgia's going to be difficult. And the game at Clemson, as well as Tennessee, may jump up there, as well as Missouri with Matty Mock at quarterback. I like South Carolina to go 10-2 against this schedule right now. A little bit later in the summer, when we lock down on the Gamecocks, we will preview the 2014 South Carolina Gamecocks. Now we want to hear from you on South Carolina's schedule right here on Mark Rogers TV.